Hello everyone, welcome to Bangers, Bops, and Banter. This is episode 27 of this podcast. 27 episodes of misery.
It hasn't been all that bad.
Yeah. I'm one of your hosts, Joe. I'm here with my co-host, Brendan.
Hi, I'm the co-host, Brendan. It's just us tonight.
Yeah, it's just me and my friend.
Yes, we're friends.
Yes. We got news coming up, and then album, and then movies.
Crazy how we have stuck to that format.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, we're gonna go over some music and movie news. Then we're gonna talk about the Aesop Rock album Spirit World Field Guide that just came out. And then we're gonna talk about The Act of Killing and The Look of Silence.
It's gonna be a heavy show.
Heavy show. I mean, the Aesop Rock album's not that heavy. It's just very cryptic.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's get into it. First up, in music news, the Grammys. The Grammys happened. We had a video going over the Grammy nominations. You can check that out on the channel. I don't know. You can put it in the description.
I'll put a link in the description.
There we go. Link in the description to see us. Or to listen to us share our thoughts about the nominations. Also, some other things happened. The global music category was changed to world music. Harvey Mason Jr., who is the president or CEO of the Recording Academy, interim president / CEO, talked about it and basically said that they met with people who were formerly from within the world music category, and ended up changing the name based on a lot of discussion. I'm gonna be honest, I think it would be way better if they just made separate genre categories for the people in world music, or I'm sorry, it's global music now.
No, that's too much effort. Then they have to actually recognize different artists and different styles.
It would just be it'd be really nice if they just had those categories. Yeah, there's also, I think he noted, in an interview, people asked about, The Weeknd not being present, and he kind of went over that and something he said in there was that when they're choosing albums, some members might not have even listened to the entire album.
Yeah, it's something we almost listened to the full album or whatever.
Listening to the full album is pretty important.
Yeah.
I guess it makes sense now why, for example, T-Pab and Good Kid, Mad City weren't chosen, because you need to listen to the entire fucking album to get it. I mean, it still doesn't make sense, because those albums are way better than the albums that won those years. So...
yeah, even if I listened to, half of Good Kid, Mad City...
I'd be way more inclined to choose it over fucking The Heist.
Yeah.
Yeah. And definitely way more inclined to choose T-Pab over the Taylor Swift album. Anyway, the Grammys suck, basically. The Weeknd also commented on this. He was pretty upset, which I think is fair. He basically, in a tweet, he claimed, "The Grammys remain corrupt. You owe me, my fans, and the industry transparency," which I think is also fair.
Yes, if the Grammys were way more transparent, I feel like a lot of the problems that arise from the Grammys could be avoided.
Definitely. Yeah. And also, Trevor Noah is going to be hosting the Grammys this year. Last 2 years it was Alicia Keys. Now it's funny man from Daily Show.
Yay! I mean, he'll probably be a good host. Like,
yeah, he'll be the host. I'm gonna be honest. I have no intention of watching the Grammys. We watched it 1 year, and it was the most boring experience, like, ever.
There's so much filler.
I know, I just want to know the awards. I want them to talk about the music, and it's just like, here's like 20 performances from a bunch of artists that you don't care about. I'd much rather them just get to awards and have like discussions on the music, but of course they don't. It's just like, here's the award. Don't ask us why we chose it. But yeah. Next in music news, Thom Yorke and Radiohead, they're auctioning off his hat from Lotus Flower.
Okay.
They're auctioning it off. The proceeds are going to charity. I just think it's really funny.
You too can have the corpse flower hat for
the
a
corpse
low
flower
price.
hat.
Oh.
Lotus
flower.
Yeah. It's signed by Thom Yorke, and it's got a hand scrawled Radiohead logo on it. So cool.
I know. I'm betting big bucks on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And finally, in music news, Guitar Center, they filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy.
Yeah, kind of saw this one coming. We talked about this a couple weeks ago, how they were going down.
Yeah.
But
Which seems like, it's like amazing to me that these like giant like franchises don't have enough money to like weather this. That like they just don't have any sort of like backup. Like,
who would
investments
save for a single year of economic downturn? Like that's
it's almost
way
like
too
that
much.
should be the bare minimum. But yeah, it's like, man, I just find it like really impressive that all of these places are like doing so poorly, despite like we've only been in quarantine for like what, 8 months or something at this point,
since March. So
yeah. And they're just like businesses are just failing because they just can't. Yeah. Anyway, on to movie news. This is one I find really funny. Obama has given Drake his blessing to play him in a movie.
Okay, I actually really want to see this movie.
I think this would be hilarious. The drone strike scene, dude, come on.
Drake does not sound like Obama at all. Like,
he doesn't.
Obama has such a deep, like, full voice.
Oh man.
I want to see this movie really bad. Please, Drake, make it happen.
Oh man. Yeah, Drake isn't even an actor, is the thing. So it's like,
no,
what?
That would make it better.
It's like, why? But yeah. Next in movie news, this is a Predator sequel, new Predator movie. But okay, I know it's like, look, it's another reboot, like again, of a franchise, but it's directed by Dan Trachtenberg, however the fuck you pronounce his last name, who directed 10 Cloverfield Lane. So maybe it won't be as bad.
Although I haven't seen any of the Cloverfield movies, because I don't care.
10 Cloverfield Lane is like supposed to be the best one out of them.
Yeah.
It's actually supposed to be a pretty tense like thriller, so yeah.
But also, what can you really do with Predator at this point?
I don't know. It's like really like it's hard to like figure out what to do with this franchise, or like most franchises, in a way that like actually does something new. I mean, like Alien sort of did it with Prometheus. It's just the movie's script kind of sucked, but like visually and like the ideas presented in that movie are really cool. It just had a really bad script. But yeah, I don't know. I think franchises are kind of hard because unless you take it in a completely new direction, then like you're just gonna end up doing the same thing as the original. So yeah. Next, Sia has been criticized because in her upcoming movie that she's directing, she cast Maggie Ziegler. I think it's Ziegler. Yeah. As the autistic lead in the movie, and Maddie Ziegler is not autistic. I don't know how I feel about this. I'm like kind of, I don't know. This doesn't seem like she is being purposefully. It's not like she's malicious about this.
No, I have a couple of things to say on this. So the fact that this is kind of like the industry standard, which is unfortunate that it is. I don't think I can really criticize Sia for just kind of going with the industry standard. It would be nice to see those groups have proper representation in films, obviously. But I think I remember seeing that when Sia was criticized for this, she responded in probably not the best way to the criticisms.
Yeah. She like lashed out on Twitter at people.
Yeah.
Which I guess I can understand. If people are attacking something you made, it might be annoying when they haven't seen it yet. But yeah, I do believe that she. I'm pretty sure. Let me see if I can find it in this article. They were originally going to cast someone who was on the spectrum. However, with the relatively quick shooting schedule and the level of functionality of the character, she decided to go with Ziegler. She tried to work with a young girl, but the girl she was working with found it very stressful. So she cast Ziegler instead, basically. Which I think that's fair. I mean, like a movie set, definitely something that is very chaotic, and for someone who is autistic, that might be very hard to handle. So I think it definitely would be nice if she went with someone who is on the spectrum, because especially if the movie was built around that, or the shooting was essentially, so they've created an environment that isn't but that's less likely to make the actor stressed out, but yeah. I don't think this is like the worst thing. I've seen people calling Sia like a cunt, and I'm like, she's not the problem. The problem's the industry more so than Sia.
Yeah, the industry is a lot of the problem. But going along with the industry.
I'm sorry. Yeah, especially since this is her first film too, so I don't feel like I necessarily blame her for this. It is ultimately her decision, but again, I think this is more of an industry problem and more of a there needs to be more emphasis on making this, or on getting the industry in a position where it is willing to and able to accommodate people who have these issues, I guess. You know?
Yeah.
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 Yeah. All right. Hey, Chaos Walking.
Yeah.
It's a film. It was delayed a bunch,
Okay.
and now there's a trailer for it.
Great.
It's written by Charlie Kaufman.
Oh.
It's going to be directed by Doug Liman.
Yeah. It's
it
based
feels
off
like
of like a book or a short story, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, basically, yeah, it's a movie. It's an action movie. It'll be interesting. I don't know. I saw the trailer. I wasn't that interested in it, honestly. It looked kind of boring. But it is written by Charlie Kaufman, so,
Yeah.
or at least partially written by him. So we'll see.
It'll be cool. I know the story it's based off of is pretty cool. I haven't read it, but I have some friends who have. They're talking about it. It's gonna be interesting to see, I think.
Yeah. And finally, for movie news, Wonder Woman 1984 is going to be released on HBO Max on Christmas Day. And also, they're not charging people extra. It's just going to be released on it. I believe.
Yeah.
Let me make sure of this.
I hope not.
Yes, it doesn't look like it. It is.
All right. I mean, that's how it should be.
Yes. It is also going to release in theaters at the same time, it seems. So, yeah, that's a good.
Right. But like, why would you go to theaters and spend $15 on a theater ticket and also possibly get COVID when you can just spend $15 on HBO Max at home?
It's a good question. That's also probably part of the point, is to get people to buy HBO Max subscriptions.
That's fair. HBO Max is honestly like, it's kind of pricey, but it's a solid streaming service.
It's a very good streaming service. Yeah, it's nice. You can watch Suicide Squad on it, so like, it's the best streaming service by far.
Yes.
Get out of here, Netflix. But yeah, and that's it for the movie news. You know what that means.
Aesop Rocky time.
Yeah, I love Aesop Rocky. You know, Aesop Rocky's coming out with this new album called Testing that we're reviewing. Yeah.
All right, moving on.
Anyway, but yeah, the album for this week is Spirit World Field Guide by Aesop Rock. It released a couple weeks ago at this point. Yeah. But I guess to like introduce the album, I should introduce Aesop Rock first for those who aren't familiar with him. Aesop Rock is he's an indie rap, I don't want to say icon. He's a major player in the indie rap scene. He has he's been around for like 20 years or so at this point. He's been pretty influential in hip hop, specifically underground hip hop, and he's known pretty explicitly for his incredibly dense and often very cryptic rapping style. You know, on most of his records, like, you'll look at the lyrics for a song and the entire thing is like double entendres and metaphors for things that are like for things that are going on in his life. I definitely think this record is one of his most cryptic in a while. This is definitely, I'd say this. I don't think it's as dense as, say, Bazooka Tooth from him, or a record like that, or one of his early records, I should say. But it is very much like caked in metaphor, as most of the album it's a concept album based around the idea of this like alternate spirit world that you're kind of like traveling through almost with, or well, I should say Aesop is kind of rapping about, and most of the ideas expressed through this metaphor relate heavily to Aesop's life and him taking trips to other countries, or his mental state, or I think drugs. There's some
he went to
allusions
other
to
countries
drugs.
and took drugs in other countries.
Well, yes, but I mean just drugs in general. There seems to be lyrics on here explicitly talking about like him being on a trip, or I mean like, and there's allusions to him essentially being in another world, like mentally too.
Yeah. When I think of like what the spirit world is after diving into this album, for me, I really think it's about Aesop's like psyche.
Yeah, definitely. I'd say it's probably like a way. It's kind of how he like views the world almost, and how he can kind of like get lost in certain types of thought, if that makes sense. Because there's lyrics where he's there's lyrics where he's kind of talking about like how certain things kind of like ground him or bring him back, if that makes sense. It's very interesting. I don't know. It's really hard to. It is legitimately like really hard to like pull apart an Aesop Rock album, because again his lyrics are so incredibly dense. Like just for an example, let me like just pull up a random lyric from one of the songs. Like from the song Attaboy, the like first verse, or there's actually only one verse on the song, but the verse opens with, "I've been floating down the river Styx, skipper cap, sipping on what's missing from your mini fridge, insulated, slicker dripping, winter like, it's Britney bitch, crops wither, docks splinter into popsicle sticks." This is like the entire record, almost.
Yeah.
It's just how he raps and expresses himself, and it's incredibly interesting, and it also makes it incredibly hard sometimes to figure out what he's talking about. He did an interview with Flood magazine for this album, where he basically gave like the general idea of what the songs are, and that definitely helps a lot to kind of piece together what these lines mean. But like you could probably spend a day diving into like any one of these songs and just figuring out all the metaphors. It's super interesting. I really love just how vibrant everything is. He's incredibly like descriptive of things, but it's in his own very cryptic way, and just gives these really colorful, interesting, weird images of whatever subject matter he's talking about. But yeah.
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 For all of you out there, Joe really likes Aesop Rock.
I love Aesop Rock a lot.
So I know where this is going.
You know where this is going. Oh man.
I feel like you're gonna like this record. It's crazy.
You think I'm damn, dude. Yeah. I mean personally I really love this record. It's like this is for me one of his most consistent records in terms of like themes and ideas. I love how he uses the spirit world to kind of tie all of these ideas together, and just makes for such an interesting record to me. There's little like interludes. There's just like these little short tracks that he puts together, that are probably they're the easiest ones to piece together because they're much more literal than other tracks. You have Dog at the Door, which is essentially about Ace's like extreme like paranoia about things, where basically his dog starts barking at something and he starts thinking that someone's about to like attack him or something. You have Flies, which is it's about
flies.
It's about flies. And I think it's also Side Quest, which is
it's about skateboarding at night?
Yeah, skateboarding at night. Side Quest is more cryptic than the other two. But yeah, these little interlude songs, they're like half songs, are like these super short, almost like little breaks, which I actually really like. They're definitely I don't know, it's just I just really enjoy them because it's definitely they're tracks that I understand why he didn't make it a full song, because it seems very like it's something that he can go over very quickly, but I enjoy that he's talking about these subjects. It's super interesting to me.
This is gonna be one of the points where I kind of disagree with you on, because these shorter tracks are like some of my least favorites off the album, because I just don't find them very compelling. Like a track like Flies, it's like okay, so I don't think he's really saying much with the track, and it's not very engaging because of that.
I mean, he isn't really saying much, but this is, I guess, to me, it's more about creating this, like, the world he's creating within the album, and, like, I don't know, I think it's just, like, nice to hear him talk about a random subject, like Fruit Flies. There's also, is it 1 to 10?
Yeah, 1
to 10, where he's talking
pain.
about his bad back.
Yeah.
I love that sort of track. Again, I don't know, they're so, like, short. It's just, like, this nice little break from the more, like, intensely lyrical stuff he usually is on. Yeah. I really like the intro. I think it's just, like, a nice little atmospheric piece to get you into the record. And I also think The Gates is a great, like, starting, like, real track.
Yeah.
His flows on the track remind me a lot of, like, new Eminem, but, like, way better. He has kind of, like, a staccato flow going, almost. But again, just, like...
Yeah, I mean, I guess. I did not get the Eminem thing when I was listening to it.
Like, the way... I don't know, the way he flows through it sort of reminds me of, like, Eminem just being, like... But, like, way smoother and, like, better.
Yeah.
That's probably only me. I'm probably the only person who's gonna get that. I love Aesop's flows throughout this record. I think he's just, like... He just goes on some of these tracks. If you enjoy fast rap, I think Aesop does a really great job of doing that while also being super interesting and entertaining, and keeping his flows very um, intricate but still engaging and like listenable. You can hear what he's saying throughout them. You have like tracks like Gauze where he just goes. He go. Or also I think Kotokushi, is that how you pronounce it?
Kotokushi's got this like really cool like racing beat.
Oh yeah.
Which Aesop works very well in.
Oh yeah. I do really love the production basically universally on this album. I think it just like it like just kind of fits Aesop really well. He has a lot of very like it's like it's bassy, but it's not in the same way as like not in like a trap beat way where it's like super bass heavy, but like it's like someone's playing a bass on the track essentially. Yeah. If that makes sense.
We should mention that Aesop does all his own production for the most part.
Yes, there's one track on here.
Yeah, I think there's like one with a co-credit.
Yeah, there's one with a co-credit that I think he said basically he got like a beat from someone else and then he like added stuff onto it. And yeah, there's just a ton of different like sounds that he kind of he like plays around with them in a way that I think is really nice. The way I guess fairly consistently he has like a bass line and then like some really interesting like synth over that, something that has like a lot of texture to it that just it just works really well for me.
Yeah. For the most part, I definitely think that the production on this record is pretty solid. There's a couple tracks here and there that I'm not huge fans on, just because the production is so... It's kind of basic, and a lot of the time it works, but there are times where it's just like not that intriguing. Like for me, Pizza Alley is one of those tracks.
I think Pizza Alley's first half I think isn't really that good, and then the second half comes in for me, and I love the second half. It just like the switch I think works. The glistening synth that happens consistently, that works really fucking well for me on the second half. But I do agree with the first half. I'm not that big on the production there. And I also think the first chorus on this track is just kind of awkward sounding.
Yeah. I'd have to agree. For me, I didn't really like the first half production, and it switches into the second half, and at the beginning switch I'm like, okay. And then as the track kept going, I kept on being less enamored with it, I guess.
Oh. I don't know. I do love the production on the second half. Personally. I think that's one thing about the album is he doesn't... I guess even if there's a song you're not super big on the production, he generally switches it up pretty quickly. Or the beat will like evolve in some way. Songs that usually only have like one consistent beat throughout are usually only like 2 or 3 minutes long, and when you get longer songs there's usually some sort of beat switch up in them. I really like that.
Yeah, that's a very good aspect of on this album.
Yeah. But yeah.
Yeah. Is there any like specific song that you really enjoyed for some reason? I don't know. We obviously like can't talk about every single song on this album because it's like 20 songs long.
Yeah, there's 21 songs, and yeah, I love most of the songs on this album. I love a lot of the tracks where he's talking about his trips. I think those have such like interesting, vivid imagery to them. Can I get 1 sec? Let me check my notes.
While you're checking, I will. Which ones? The Holy Waterfall is about a trip of his to Cambodia. It's one of my personal favorite trip tracks because there's just a ton of like experience that he's talking about in that track, which is really interesting to listen to.
Yeah. I forget which is. There's like multiple of these. I know there's one in Cambodia. There's one in Thailand.
Yes,
or
Sleeper
from what it
Cars,
goes-
Thailand.
Yes. I forget. I'm pretty sure there's one other, or maybe I'm like.
Pizza
Yes,
Alley is Peru.
Oh yes. Okay. Yeah. I do really love the imagery he kind of comes up with. On these tracks, definitely. I think also. I really love Marble Cake. I do wish Marble Cake was the ending to the album. It's interesting because reading his like interview, he says that he thinks of Marble Cake as the actual closer, and then like Four Winds is like an epilogue essentially to him. Which I think is actually it's interesting. I think it made the Four Winds feel better as an ending to the album, but I definitely wish that Marble Cake was still the closer, because I think that thematically, as the song kind of discusses basically his views on like art and creation almost, or I guess not specifically art and creation. The point of the song is essentially like the goal shouldn't be the point of life.
Yeah, it's
like
kind of like, oh, it's about the journey, not the destination.
Yeah,
which is kind of cliche, but the way Aesop puts it, it's not really that bad.
Yeah, definitely. You have like, I mean, there's some great lines in here. No stacked sash or accolades from authority. I love. And definitely the way he goes about it, I think, is really fantastic. Whereas the Four Winds, the actual closer, is more about like not moving on, but like moving forward, I guess, constantly, which I think works with. Again, I feel like Marble Cake like sonically feels more like a closer to me. Yeah. Oh, also I want to shout out Gauze, because Gauze has like I think Gauze just sounds amazing, and Aesop just has an incredible flow on that track. If you want some lyrical, spiritual, miracle stuff, and you like fast rap, I think Gauze is the track for you.
I just want to say Gauze has an Eraserhead reference, so
it does have an Eraserhead reference. But yeah, definitely. And yeah, I think this concept also works really well for the album. The way he's able to use it to explore these various aspects of his life, I think works really well. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess if you want to wrap up,
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about the song. We can always talk more because there's so much to talk about here. But
yes,
it's a really cool project. So we'll put in some closing thoughts. How about that?
Yeah. Do you want to go first, or?
Oh, I can go first. Sure. Okay. So I like Aesop Rock. He's not like my favorite rapper or anything, like some people. Anyways, for the most part, this record's pretty great. It is very consistent, which I think overall is a good thing. However, I think it can get a little bit wary with its runtime of over an hour long. there's a lot of great songs here, a lot of great tracks. I'll just say Gauze, Kotokoshi, probably my favorite off the album, and a whole bunch others. But there's still tracks here and there where either the production isn't the greatest, or I think Aesop isn't as interesting to listen to on this subject as maybe he could be. But still, overall, really great project. Would recommend checking it out if you have time. I'm at like an 8 to an 8.5 on this album.
Cool. Yeah, personally, I like absolutely love this album. I think this is like one of Aesop's best projects personally. It's so like creative. The imagery he creates for his lyrics is so vivid and interesting to me. I love the concept for it. I think he works in all of these themes throughout the album, like perfectly within the concept. There's like maybe one or two times where the production like drops off a little bit, and there's like, I'm not like the biggest on having on having the four winds as the ending, but like that's basically it. I love this record. I think it's incredible. I'd give it a 9.5 out of 10. Yeah.
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 Tune in for end of the year lists where you'll probably see this album on at least Joe's, maybe mine as well.
It's gonna be up there.
Oh, so you like a
top
two or something.
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know where it'll place. It'll probably be. It's at least top 3, probably.
Yeah.
I'm guessing it'll probably be number 2 because I think my number 1's already locked in.
Okay. Well, we'll have to see.
Yeah. So with that, let's move on to the movies.
Oh boy.
The movies. Excuse me.
These were my picks. This is
yes.
So last week after we finished recording and we locked these picks in, I told Joe I was excited to watch these. Excited was the wrong word. These two movies, The Act of Killing and The Look of Silence, are probably they're documentaries, and they're probably two of the most difficult films I think I've ever seen just to watch. Very, very challenging to watch. To give a bit of background, I guess we'll go into the history of it. So Indonesia, back in the 60s, 1965.
65.
65, December or September 65 is when it all started with the... so essentially there is the president, Sukarno, and he was like... And there are 3 major factions, the communists called the PKI, the military, and the Islamist faction, I guess. And they really, like, the communists and the military were rising to power, and Sukarno was trying to like make everybody be friends, and it wasn't working. And then this thing called the 30th September movement happened, and they weren't specifically aligned with any specific faction, but what they did is they captured 7 top military generals, executed 6 of them, the 7th one escaped, in order to try and curb the military power. And then the military reorganized under General Suharto, different than Sukarno, he's Suharto, blamed that on the communists, and then used that as an excuse to start exterminating communists and Chinese and many other people across Indonesia, and
essentially anyone they didn't like.
And they installed a military dictatorship under Suharto, who was a dictator for like 20 to 30 years or something like that. And it's called the Indonesian genocide for a reason. And fun fact, the lists of communists were supplied to the military by the CIA, and also other people. But
big surprise there.
oh,
CIA involved in genocide?
Oh man,
Oh
crazy.
man. I'd never expect that.
Yeah, crazy. But we'll start off with the act of killing, because it came out first. Act of killing came out in 2012. So the thing is, because this happened in 1965 to 1966 is when most of the killings happened. It's estimated like a couple 100,000 people.
It's 500,000 to 1 million.
To 1 million, yeah.
We don't know the exact amount.
Yeah, and most of these killings were carried out by local death squads who were just gangsters who happened to be in the right place at the right time.
And they're funded by the military to do this. And basically the act of killing focuses, or well, we should say the act of killing is not a documentary about the genocide. It's about the society that the genocide created, essentially.
Yeah.
The perpetrators of the genocide created a society. What is that society like?
Exactly. It's very eye-opening, because a lot of these people who committed genocide are still alive today. They're older now, obviously. And there's still a very heavy anti-communist sentiment due to years and years and years of propaganda. You don't get openly jailed for being a communist in Indonesia now, but still probably not the best.
Congratulations.
Place. Probably not the best place to be a communist. So the act of killing specifically follows a death squad leader named Anwar Congo, who is he's a very interesting character, I guess.
Yes, he was a gangster back in the 60s, and he got a lot of money to kill people. He personally killed, or he's said to have personally killed 1,000 people.
Mm-hmm. There's one scene in the movie, and because these people are celebrated as heroes in their country,
definitely,
for killing thousands of people. There's one scene where they go on television, and they're having a TV interview, because essentially how it's set up is the director of the documentary, Joshua Oppenheimer, came to Anwar Congo. It's hey, I'll let you make a movie about what happened for history, and that's kind of the framing device for the movie. It's kind of meta, but they're doing a TV interview, sort of advertising the movie that they're making, and the people in the in the newsroom behind the scenes are oh, is that really Anwar Congo? Didn't he kill 1,000 people? And they're very casual about it, and the TV anchor is celebrating him for that, and that was just there's so many moments in this documentary that are just such a shock, I guess.
Oh yeah, definitely. They never portray it as a bad thing, or it's not even I'm sorry. It's not even it's portrayed as oh, it's a unfortunate consequence of a war or something. It's literally just yeah, it was good. It was good that we killed thousands of people.
Mm-hmm.
And they just talk about it so openly.
They talk about a lot of things. We should have done a content warning for
yes, we should.
Murder, torture, rape, genocide. Yeah, it's kind of insane just how casual they are about all these things, and it's just normalized in their society.
Yeah, definitely. It's man, it is super eye-opening. There's one scene towards I think it's literally the midpoint of the film, where they're in the studio or whatever, where they're filming part of the movie, and one person is sharing his story.
Yeah, Anwar
About-
Congo's neighbor.
Yeah, and it's basically him like, oh, here's an idea for the film. My dad was like executed by death squads.
Yeah.
And he was like basically, he was like asked to come outside their house, and he was shot, and then they found him like a day later or something under a barrel, like a barrel is cut in half, like lengthwise. And they had to bury him by the side of the road. And like, it's weird because like the guy who's saying it is really like he gets very depressed about it.
Yeah.
But he's like, this is like, oh, this would be cool, right? When he's presenting it, the idea to them.
It's really difficult, and because after he presents that, they're like, no, we can't do that. We can't really put that in. And he sits down and like he's crying.
Yeah. It's also, but like also, there's definitely slowly over the film, you see Anwar go from like happy to like make the film, and slowly as you're watching parts of it, you see he's no longer like smiling at anything. He's like, I mean, towards the end, he eventually like, there's a moment where he breaks down because he realizes what he did essentially, and how awful it was. But like, you can definitely see how like making him do this, or allowing him to do this, it kind of made him realize how shitty he was.
Definitely. He starts out feeling guilty. He's like having nightmares, having trouble sleeping, because of that. And just over the course of the film, the realization of the just gravity of the situation becomes more and more. For me, I literally remember the moment, like it's 10 minutes into the film where Anwar is showing Joshua like how he killed most of his victims. That for me, that was the moment when the magnitude of what this man did sunk into me, and that was a rough moment, I have to say.
Oh man, yeah, it's definitely really interesting. Again, it's just so casual.
Yeah.
It's just like, yep, here's how I killed people. And he was like explaining like, oh, you do it with a wire because then you don't get blood on you. It's very interesting.
There's a lot of moments like that throughout the film. I want to highlight a couple others. One for me is there when Herman, or I don't know if it's Herman or it might have been a different guy, and his posse are going through like the market, and they're talking to all these Chinese vendors and just extorting them for cash.
Oh yeah, they're literally just extorting them.
So casually, and they're proud of it. They're showing it off to Joshua that they definitely can do this.
The corruption within like government is like very present throughout the entire film. You have for example, you have when one of the guys, I don't remember what his name is, when one of the guys is like running for I forget what he was running specifically for. He was running for a political position.
Oh yeah, Herman. He was running for parliament.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it wasn't Herman who was extorting people.
No.
It was someone else. But Herman, like, when they're, like, going around to people,
everybody's like, where's the gifts?
Yeah, where's the gifts? Because, like, political parties straight up bribe people there in order to get them to vote for them.
And the thing is,
like,
the only reason Herman wanted to run is in the first place is so he could extort people with his
Oh yeah,
position
definitely.
of power.
He literally is talking about how like he can go up to someone's like shop and be like, it's 10 centimeters off, I'm gonna demolish it, and they'll be like, oh no, here's money, so you don't do that. And he's just like, yeah, I can do that, it'd be great, right? It's interesting because the only person who actually seems like they kind of realize the magnitude of what they did is Anwar. No one else, everyone else stays in denial for the entire movie. You have, I don't remember his name.
So yeah, Anwar is really he's kind of contrasted with Adi, who
He's the guy who flies in, right?
Yeah, who was
Yes.
either part of his death squad or the leader of a different death squad. But Adi seems to be fully aware of what they did and also fully okay with it. He seems to take the mentality that it was kill or be killed, and so
Sort of, yeah.
that's how he seems to justify his actions.
I don't even think he necessarily does that. He's just like, I guess he just thinks the communists were bad, and he thinks that because of that it was okay to kill them, essentially.
I guess I don't even know about that because they're talking about how the film portraying communists as like awful people was propaganda, and they knew that, and they also
That's
knew that
true.
they went way farther. They were way worse. Like there was this propaganda film made to portray the communists as these terrible people, and that's why we need to exterminate them, right? But
Yeah.
they admit that they were crueler than the communists in that film.
Yeah, definitely. Because like, I mean, Adi's also like, he's like understanding as to why people are upset with him too. It's weird because he's like fine with it. He's like, yeah, it's natural for people to be upset over this.
But he doesn't feel
So, like-
sorry for what he did.
Yeah. There's like one point when Adi and Joshua are driving just somewhere in a car, and Joshua's asking about it, and at one point Joshua mentions that what he did is a war crime under the Geneva Conventions, and Adi's just like, you know, history's written by the victors, and you know, the Geneva Conventions were written by the victors, so, and you know, we won here, so what we did isn't wrong because I say it isn't wrong, essentially. It's just very, it's just so interesting how normal everything is, especially the way they go about their lives, because they're pretty, when they're not talking about, you know, genocide that they committed, they seem like normal people.
Yeah, like both, like Adi is a father. Anwar has like grandchildren, and he seems nice to like his grandchildren and stuff. They like raise ducks, and he's
Yeah.
nice to the ducks. It's just he also killed 1,000 people.
Yeah. Man. Definitely. It's such an interesting dive just into, I guess, the lengths people go to like deny what they did. There is the moment where they are recreating the one moment where I think where Anwar finally realizes the consequences of his actions.
Yeah.
Is when he's watching the scene of him, you know, like them like recreating someone, like a communist being killed, and he's the person who's
Yeah.
being killed.
He's getting
He's like-
strangled with a wire.
Yes, and he's like, man, that felt really bad.
Yeah, he was like, I was scared. Is that how they felt when I did that to them? And Joshua goes, no, they probably felt it way worse because they knew they were about to die.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, one that's such a powerful moment, but you can see that was also a very powerful moment for Anwar.
Yeah, definitely. And then, like, you have the very end of the film where he goes back to a roof where killings happened, and he just, like, he literally starts throwing up. Just, like, a visceral reaction, because he finally, like, understands how awful it was.
Mm-hmm.
Man, it's super interesting. There's also the way everything is so casual also extends not just to killing, but, like, to rape at one point.
Oh, this scene fucked me up.
When they're recreating, like, the burning of a village, essentially.
Yep.
And one of the guys who's part of the paramilitary group, who is essentially in control of the government, one of the guys from there is just like he's just talking about how he'd rape women, like, constantly. He, like, at one point he says it was hell for them, but it was like heaven for me.
No. Specifically in reference to talking about when he would rape 14-year-old girls.
Yes.
He said that he would tell them, this is going to be hell for you, but it's going to be heaven on earth for me.
Yeah.
Which, that phrase is seared into my mind because I just can't imagine, I guess, how somebody would be okay with doing that.
Oh, yeah.
That is just, like, so, like, foreign to me.
They literally say, like, oh, the younger the better, like, during that conversation. So it's oof.
Yeah.
Yeah, also, like, they mention how they want to have, like, humor in the film. At one point, one of the guys, I forget the other main guy.
Which one? Herman?
Yeah, Herman. He, like, dresses up as a woman. And then they, like, chase after him, and they're like, we're gonna, like, rape you and beat you. And that's supposed to be, like, a comedy scene in the film. Just, like, oof. Oh.
So... it's truly an eye-opening documentary.
Yeah.
I can't say that, like, I've had any other experience in my life that has, like, faced me with the issues that are presented in this film the same way this film does it. Because, like, sure, I feel like I've seen documentaries with, like, Holocaust survivors. I don't think I've ever seen a documentary with a Holocaust prison guard. I know, was it Shoah?
Yeah, that film.
It
interviews. They basically interview Nazis in that film, or people who were Nazis. I mean, I hope they're not Nazis anymore. That would be shitty. But they probably still were.
I've not seen Shoah, but I assume it's a similar experience. But, like, in my life, I've never been faced with that. Like, you always see, like, oh, here are the Holocaust survivors, or here is someone who survived X and Y. But you're never really faced with, I guess, the perpetrators.
Yeah.
And it's it's so weird to see things from that perspective. I mean, to see them so celebrated in their society. I don't even. I would. It's just so foreign.
Yeah.
And I honestly feel lucky that is not the case. Like, I don't know, we don't look at mass murderers as heroes for the most part here. So,
I mean, well, I don't know about that.
There's some exceptions.
Mass murder. There's quite a few exceptions, honestly.
But at least we are like, it's split among society.
There's some people who don't celebrate the mass murderers, which is, that's good.
That's good. And we can openly criticize the mass murderers as mass murderers and not be scared for our lives.
Yeah. Yeah, do we want to wrap? We
can wrap up on active killing and move into Look of Silence.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to go first?
I can go first. Like I said, this film is it's a very unique film, I think, and it honestly, like, it fucked me up watching this because just to see someone who had committed had done so much awful things and just be so okay with it, and also the transformation of Anwar from being okay with it to being very much not okay with it. It's incredible. I kept thinking about scenes from this movie, things like the scene where they're going through the market and explaining the Chinese vendors, or the scene where they're casually talking about rape. Like, those were just playing in my mind for days and, like, truly haunting. This film is a 10. It's not really like an enjoyable film, but like I said, it's a very challenging film, and I've never seen anything like it, so I have to give it a 10 out of 10. It made me cry as well. I was crying a lot while watching it.
Yeah, I have to agree. This is a incredible film. It's one of the most unique and interesting documentaries I've ever seen. The way it confronts, because it's not even really confronting genocide, it's confronting the attitudes towards that genocide. And, like, it just does such a good job of, like, showing off how, like, awful it is without, like, nothing in the documentary feels manipulative, it's not like it's, like, edited in a way that makes them out to be, like, awful people. They just are. It's I don't know. I wouldn't say this film affected me as personally as it did for you.
Yeah.
And I think there's maybe a couple sequences that I'm not as engaged with personally, but I still think it's an incredible film. I'd give it a 9 out of 10. Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to bounce off something. You mentioned that that the film isn't, like, edited to make them seem awful. They just are. One thing that I really like about this is that Joshua never is, like, accusatory of anybody in the film, or, like, criticizes them, really. He's very much just an observer, and that translates for a very good viewing experience, I'd say.
Yes, definitely. He lets them speak and basically lets them incriminate themselves. He's never, like, pointing his finger. He just lets you see it.
This is kind of not the case in the next film that we're talking about, The Look of Silence, which is on the same topic, but instead of Joshua, just alone following like Anwar Congo, he found. Oh, he's only described by his first name. For.
Adi.
Adi. Oh,
He's
Adi.
kept anonymous.
Yeah.
For a pretty good reason. As basically his brother was a victim of the mass killings, and essentially this film is following him as he visits people who participated in the killings and confronts them, essentially. This film is definitely more accusatory. I think, for me personally, this was a bit more of a gut punch than The Act of Killing, because I think this wasn't... Whereas in The Act of Killing, the only person who really comes to a realization is Anwar, and that kind of takes place over the course of the entire film. And in this film, when confronted with all of, like, the evidence that, like, these people were either complicit or actively participated in a genocide, those people just straight up deny it. They come up with every excuse you could imagine to explain why it was either justified or why they aren't to blame. And that really, like, it just gave me more of a feeling of, like, hopelessness. I guess because in The Act of Killing, there's kind of somewhat of, I mean, I wouldn't call it a redemption, because Anwar is still awful, but you could see that there's, like, the ability for these people to realize what they did was terrible, and you could see that there's the possibility that they feel, like, regret over these actions, and that's not really present in this film. Because when confronted with like these facts that, you know, these people are participated in a genocide, they don't acknowledge it, essentially. And that was, like, just very depressing, because there's never it felt very hopeless, because there's never, it feels like there's not a possibility of any sort of, like, retribution, you know. There's no way for, you know, they don't want, like, revenge, but there's no way for them to get to like, be at peace, you know.
Yeah.
They're constantly, I mean, there's the scene in the school where the teacher is talking about how essentially the communists were evil. And were, like, awful, and they're like, oh, they tortured these generals, you know, they did a bad thing. And then he gives, like, a very PC version of the events, where he's like, you know, the communists, they were taken to camps, or they were put in prison because they did bad things. And that, I think it's also something that's sort of present a bit in this film that isn't as much present. Well, actually, no, never mind. The way propaganda is present in each of these films is pretty different, because The Act of Killing specifically deals with the paramilitary group that I forget the name of.
Pankasila Youth.
Yes, they've essentially taken over, like, the nation. They're like patriotic in a similar way to the American military.
Pretty much, they're like Boy Scouts on crack.
Yes, and, like, the way that they, like, talk about all these, you know, the actions that happened. Everything is framed as good, whereas in this film the propaganda feels like it's more insidious, because they're indoctrinating children with the ideas that, you know, these communists were bad and we did a good thing by imprisoning them. Essentially training the children to grow up with a mindset that communists are automatically bad, and that the genocide was justified.
Yeah.
And like, oh, one sec. But yeah, the confrontations especially, I think, got to me more. Like, especially the one with Adi's
His uncle?
Yeah, his uncle,
Uh-huh.
who was a prison guard camp, or a camp guard.
Yep.
And like how he literally knew what was going on with them, and like, and him just kind of justifying it, and like being like, he tries so many ways to like defend what he did essentially. He's like, I mean, at first he's kind of like, it was just like a job essentially, or like, and he's also, he says like, I had to defend the state, and then later he kind of switches and he's like, the communists, they aren't religious,
Oh yeah.
so they're bad, essentially. He's essentially justifying it by saying they aren't religious, which isn't true, but
One is not a justification. Two, it's also just propaganda. They certainly were religious, some of them.
yes. You have also the interview with the government official, who I forget what position he was in.
Oh, he had switched around. At the time, he was like a spokesperson or something.
Yeah. And he talks about, or he's like fully okay with it essentially.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it put him into a position of power, and he has kept that power his entire life.
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely one aspect of the film that's very interesting, is that pretty much everyone who participated in the genocide has profited off of it,
mm-hmm.
and certainly feels very defensive because of that. They're very defensive of their position. Like they're completely okay with having gained this power from what they did. You have the guy he first visits, who's one of the death squad leaders.
Mm-hmm.
And he says like, oh, people are like scared of me, and I'm okay with that. I'm like happy with that.
He enjoys being, people being afraid of him, because I assume it makes him feel more powerful.
Yeah, definitely. I just think this film creates such a feeling of hopelessness. There's like no way. It feels like there's no way out of the situation, basically. I think it's also emphasized by like the recordings he watches of the two death squad leaders, who are like completely okay with what they're like, similar to what Anwar was doing in The Act of Killing. They're like recreating how they killed people, and one of them specifically talks about killing Adi's brother.
Yeah. One of them wrote a book illustrating how they killed, what was it, like 36 people?
Yeah.
And his brother is one of them.
Yeah. Oh man.
And he's very proud of that book.
Yes.
He's like, yeah, we'll teach them the history. They should know how we did all these great things.
Yeah. Yeah.
I also, one of the aspects of the Look of Silence, which I really appreciate, is you see a lot of moments between Adi and his family, where his family is like, stop doing this, stop having interviews. You're going to end up in a ditch on the side of the road.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of emphasis placed just on him and his family, which I think is definitely good. It definitely helps you like empathize with him. Like certainly. Oh man, and the story of how his brother died also is
It's
really
brutal. It's absolutely brutal.
because he got attacked essentially. He got attacked and then like dragged himself home. Over the course of like, they don't say a specific time frame. I assume it was like an hour or two or something. Gets home, he like asks for coffee, and then he gets taken away. And the people who are taking him away claim they're going to get him to a hospital, and of course that's not what happens. He's taken and killed. There's also something that's brought up in this film that I don't think is present in the act of killing, is that a lot of the death squad leaders are like, yeah, the way I stayed sane was I drank my victim's blood. Like literally straight up. It's just so weird.
It's odd. And it's like, I don't... Okay, a couple things. I don't think... I feel like it has to be placebo, because I don't see any reason why drinking your victim's blood after killing them would make you sane.
Yes.
But they claim it seems to work. I mean, they say there are people who didn't drink the blood and they went in so-called insane. Really what they mean by insane is feeling guilt for your actions.
Yes.
Or like having PTSD and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, it's just so weird. It definitely has to be placebo.
Yeah. I mean, they have plenty of ways of justifying their actions. So.
Yeah.
You do get to see a wide variety.
Of just the ways people are like, or rationalize what they did. There's one point when the first guy that he interviews is like, oh yeah, blood, it tastes sweet, like salty and sweet.
Yeah, he volunteers up that information.
Yeah.
Which was odd.
Yeah.
It's an odd turn for the conversation.
I will say also, like, there's a bit of relief in this film. The act of killing is pretty constant with its subject matter, but since we get to see Adi and his family, you get to see him, playing with his daughter and, like, reading her a story, which is it's cute. Mm-hmm. It's nice to have kind of this moment of, like, I guess, happiness in a film that's very depressing. There's also the time when he goes to one of the perpetrators' homes, and it's him and his daughter, and the guy at that point he's senile, he'd gone senile, and he he's not all there at this point. But the daughter seems like very open to the ideas or like the things that Adi is saying, mm-hmm. which I think is like the glimmer of hope, I guess, present. Yeah. That the people who perpetrated these killings, they are like gone essentially. There's no way you're going to like convince them that what they did was wrong. but the people, they're like children and people who have been, indoctrinated into the ideas that their actions were justified. They seemingly can be, swayed. They're not. They're not 100%, convinced. Although, the other family, or the children of the other person they interview, are
they were less
Nazis.
Receptive.
They were very defensive. They kind of just wanted to not think about it, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And they went through all sorts of different ways to try and justify it. Like they're like, oh, our father's dead. Can't you just let him rest? Can't you not bring this up? And then there was also like, they just straight up said like, I don't want to deal with this. Essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Good movie choices.
Yeah, like I said.
Next week will be a lot. Don't worry. Next week will be a lot.
This is gonna be more lighthearted.
But yeah, do you want to wrap it up?
We certainly can. The Look of Silence for me, again, this film is also incredibly hard to watch. Maybe it was just that I'd already seen the act of killing, but Look of Silence was certainly didn't affect me as much as the act of killing. It's still a very, very powerful film, and there's there's content like I've never seen in any other film, because it's so real, and lots of these people are probably still alive today and still justifying their actions by saying, oh, well, they were going to die anyways, so might as well have been me, or oh, chain of command, whatever.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's truly hopeless seeing all these people just ignore moral responsibility. For me, you said that like the moments with his family were like glimmers of hope, which you liked, and I was like, oh, that part, that's kind of what I think is like my tiniest flaw with this movie, is that those moments sort of feel, I guess I want just more straight hopelessness,
Brendan's on some doomer pill shit.
I mean, that's just how it feels sometimes. That's just how it feels. But yeah, incredible films, both by Joshua Oppenheimer. Check them out. Yeah, I'd give The Look of Silence like a 9.5.
Yeah. Look of Silence for me, it's like very hard to say if I like this more than The Act of Killing, because I think this movie is more, it had more impact on me. I feel like The Act of Killing is more interesting in terms of like the psychology of everything. The way, I guess though, with The Act of Killing dealing directly with the perpetrators of genocide, you get a deeper look into their psychology, whereas this is more on like, I guess, about trying to get like retribution, essentially. And I definitely think, I don't know, they're basically equal for me. I'd give The Look of Silence a 9 out of 10 as well. I guess both of these would be 9.5s, but I've kind of stopped doing 0.5 ratings for movies. But yeah, both of these films are incredible. You can watch them for free, so definitely to give them a watch if you're in the mood to feel depressed. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the podcast for this week. Fun podcast, real fun time.
Good week. Yeah.
Good week. Next week's podcast will be a lot more lighthearted.
Yeah. It's December, so we're bringing in the Christmas spirit next week with Home Alone 2: Lost in New York for the movie.
Yeah. And for the album, we're going to be doing Hot Rats by Frank Zappa.
Damn, those rats really do be hot, though.
Yo, they pretty hot, not gonna lie. Yeah. I hope, we'll see you next episode, hopefully. Or, well, we won't, but you will. I mean, you won't see us, you'll hear us, but, Anyway, I hope you have a good day.